Story 1. I am ready to get attacked, but hear me out. The new Wicked movie with Ariana and Cynthia. Story 2. I love the play Wicked, but their press tour has completely turned me off. Everyone looks way too skinny. Story 3, 2001. A Space Odyssey. I tried to watch it 4 times at home and always fell asleep. Then I watched it in a cinema, and it was an incredible movie. Story 4. Oppenheimer. I am a huge history buff and very familiar with the story and its importance. The movie is really fucking boring. Story 5. Backdoor Sluts 9. I was extremely interested for about 90 seconds. Then I suddenly lost interest and turned it off. Story 6. I fell asleep in the theater during Lincoln, and my husband and others were upset because I was snoring, but I could not help it. It was the most boring movie I have ever seen. I feel bad about ruining the experience for others, though. Story 7. Ugh. The Hobbit Trilogy. I cannot stay awake through them for love or money. Story 8. I finished it just barely, but I thought Formula 1 was just meh. Story 9. Interstellar was amazing. I absolutely loved the scene when they fly by Saturn. The black hole was breathtaking as well. Maybe I went in with high expectations because everyone hyped it up before I saw it for the first time in 2024, but it was pretty underwhelming for me. People like to immediately say you did not understand it if you did not like it, which is nonsense. I understood it perfectly. It did not suck. It was just not a masterpiece. Story 10. The new Dune was so slow that I could not stand it. I legitimately dozed off a couple of times while watching it. Story 11. Pulp Fiction. I fell asleep twice before even finishing half of it. Story 12. Deep Blue Sea is obviously not an Oscar winner, but many people enjoy it. I never finished it because I got bored and left. Story 13. La La Land. Ugh. I was on a plane for 16 hours and I still couldn't watch more than 10 minutes. Story 14. I am ready to be crucified over this, but The Wolf of Wall Street is the only movie I have ever left in a theater. Story 15. A lot of people like the new Top Gun and Jack Reacher movies, and they are so cliché and awful it isn't even funny. Story 16. I usually get downvoted or insulted for this, but here goes. Fight Club. Story 17. I watched 20 minutes of the new Naked Gun expecting big laughs but gave up. Story 18. Any version of Dune. If I wanted to watch a movie about politics, I'd watch the news. Story 19. Inception. I tried 3 times and fell asleep each time. It's a movie I should love given my usual tastes. Story 20. I finished it because I'd paid for the cinema ticket and I was with friends, but if I'd been watching it at home I would have turned Once Upon a Time in Hollywood off for sure. Fucking boring, a pointless film. Story 21. This is not a movie. It is arcane. It has been such a slog so far that it is unbearable to watch sober. Story 22. The Lord of the Rings. Jesus Christ, just show 2 fewer hours of walking and I might stick around. Incredibly boring. Story 23. Jurassic Park scared the shit out of me when I was 8. Thank you, Madame Bastarach. I haven't seen it since. Apocalypse Now. The scene where they conduct an air raid on a village just to go surfing was far too disgusting for me to watch the rest. Taxi Driver. It seemed dull and pointless. And the scene with the man who openly fantasized about murdering his wife turned me off. Story 24. There is something about Mary. I have nothing against Ben Stiller. His humor is not for me. Story 25. Tar started last year. I am not sure it is even over yet. It seemed to go on forever before I turned it off or fell asleep. Story 26. I could not get into Gangs of New York. I am really into history, and when the movie came out I read up on the Plug Uglies and other 5 Points gangs and the history of the time. It is interesting that New York City had secessionist sympathies and that the Plug Uglies were gunning for Abraham Lincoln, but the movie dragged. The Wolf of Wall Street was also too long. When I realized there were 2 hours left I could not finish it. Story 27. Wicked. 1 minute in and I shut it off. The same for the Mean Girls remake. Story 28. A Christmas Story has 2 or 3 funny jokes and nothing else going for it. Story 29. I tried to watch the new Blade Runner movie 3 times, and I fell asleep halfway each time. Story 30. Wicked. I did not really mind Hamilton, but Wicked felt off. The menu, the final plot twist could have been seen from light years away, and the whole story feels bad. Story 31. The Matrix. I was excited to finally watch it with my housemate. It was a film I had never gotten around to but had heard was good. I fell asleep. I have since tried to watch it again, but I switched off. The only other film I have fallen asleep during is the first Avatar, and that was at the cinema. Story 32. I've tried on and off to watch Heat over the years, but I've never made it past 45 minutes. My friend has always told me it's excellent. Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Val Kilmer are all great. I love crime movies too, but I just can't be bothered. I don't know if it's overrated, if movie styles have changed, or what. I'll probably try again and have the same result. Story 33. Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a highly rated movie, but I dropped it halfway because I was very bored. Story 34. I do not know what anyone else thinks about Wayward Pines, but I think the second season sucks. I cannot stand watching it for even 10 seconds. It is the worst show I have ever seen, except for the first season. Story 35. On the third letter of recommendation, I realized I had invested too much time in the first two. After 20 minutes on the third, I went out and mowed the lawn. Story 36. Everything Everywhere All at Once. What the heck is that movie? Story 37. I refuse to watch Titanic. The actual event was not that exciting. Why make a movie? I refuse to watch Avatar as well. There is too much blind dedication. Story 38. Wicked. I do not care. Attack me all you want. I could not stand it. Story 39. Scott Pilgrim. Maybe it's because my last relationship at the time ended with my significant other cheating, but I couldn't get myself to care about any of the characters. I felt bad for Knives the whole time and wanted to see Scott fail. Story 40. Becoming John Malkovich. I love the actors, but I fell asleep both times. Story 41. All of the Lord of the Rings. I would fall asleep about 45 minutes in. I read the books when I was much younger, but not the movies. Story 42. Everything Everywhere All at Once. Such a boring waste of time. Very bad acting, too. Story 43. The Big Lebowski. I love the actors, the directors, and even the story, but it doesn't catch my interest. I'm actually embarrassed when people talk about it. Story 44. My ex-girlfriend could not tolerate watching Inglourious Bastard. She normally had decent taste and liked similar movies and shows, but this movie was an exception and she felt tortured having to sit through it. I want to pull my hair every time she talks about the movie. Story 45. I hated The Substance. It would have been much better as a short film or a Black Mirror episode. Story 46. I have seen all of Peter Jackson's film adaptations of Tolkien's works, including all 3 The Lord of the Rings films and all 3 The Hobbit films. I understand they are technically marvels and masterpieces, but I just do not find Tolkien's stories compelling. I could not finish the books either. Story 47. The Empire Strikes Back. I fall asleep as soon as they leave Hoth, and I think Han Solo is an incredibly overrated character. Story 48. Pretty much anything in the gangster or mobster genre. I just cannot get into it. Goodfellas, Scarface, even the Godfather movies. I know I am the minority here, but they are just not my cup of tea. Story 49. Unbreakable. Don't get me wrong. I love Bruce Willis as an actor, and M. Night Shyamalan has made a few movies I enjoy. Everyone praised this film, but I kept falling asleep. Took me a week to finish, and by the time the signature twist was revealed, I was just glad it was over. Story 50. Uncut Gems. Adam Sandler screaming for 2 hours was too much. Story 51. I have still never seen the second half of Blade Runner. The hyperdork I was dating at the time insisted I needed to watch the 4-hour director's final cut, and I gave up. Story 52. Napoleon Dynamite. I did not crack a smile once. I hated it and could not finish it. Story 53. Napoleon Dynamite. I turned it off at the scene where he tosses a toy tied to a string out of a bus window. Some of the worst things I've ever seen. Story 54. Nobody will understand me but The Shawshank Redemption. I always saw only parts and hated them. By now I must have seen the whole movie because it is unavoidable, but I still hate it. Story 55. All of the Twilight movies are awful. Watching someone rake their fingernails across a chalkboard for 2 hours would be easier than watching Kristen Stewart. The worst. Story 56. Forrest Gump feels grating to think about. Tom Hanks's irritating voice as a simpleton is horrendous, and his acting even more so, with a plot that sounds like it was written by a simpleton. The film presents a down-to-earth fool who is actually very talented, has improbable adventures involving important points in history, and is portrayed as having sage wisdom despite his simplicity. Everyone loves him, he becomes wealthy, and he is kind to a friend's family. His childhood friend is abused and later dies of acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which is presented as tragic. The man and the woman have a child, and he tells his story to strangers as if anyone can dispense wisdom. It feels like contrived fare for baby boomer hippies and rebellious Generation X, cheap sentimental bait and glorified commercials suggesting that travel automatically confers wisdom. Story 57. I say this as a Tarantino fan. Both Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight were absolute garbage. I forced myself to sit through them because I am a fan. After wasting hours of my life that I can never reclaim, I can say with certainty that they were terrible. They were so bad that I never bothered to see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He has always been self-indulgent as a filmmaker. He has become so self-involved that I find his work difficult to enjoy. Story 58. Avatar. The Pursuit of Happiness. Toy Story. Schindler's List. But the worst one was Cross Keys. It hurt my soul. Story 59. Tenet. I gave it 30 minutes, but the plot was very confusing. Story 60. I tried Brazil several times but fell asleep halfway through. Story 61. Blazing Saddles. I walked out of the theater because I thought it was stupid. Story 62. The Brutalist. The cinematography was great and the acting was good, but I just could not get into it. It was boring and did not broach anything new. I was expecting a deeper exploration or insight into the immigrant experience, work obsession, or dealing with trauma. Story 63. I have a few: Titanic, Fight Club, There Will Be Blood, Avatar, and Schindler's List. Anything with Sean Penn. Story 64. The Remains of the Day. I finished it, but I wished I had not. I kept expecting something to happen, but nothing did. Story 65. Leave No Trace. I really respect what this film was doing, but I was bored to tears. Story 66. Not that it was amazing, but I could not finish The New Guy. Story 67. I have genuinely tried twice, but I cannot get through The Revenant. Story 68. Don't want to sound like I'm making a reference here, but I couldn't get through The Godfather. I've tried at least 4 times. Story 69. Star Wars. I do not see the appeal at all. It is confusing, and the way they release the films makes it feel like you have to be an expert in the lore to understand all the different characters and places. Story 70. The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. When it came out, it was supposed to be very artsy. I was horrified and should have walked out. I have never been mentally well enough to watch things like that. Story 71. The Godfather is a fine movie, but I felt like I was just waiting for it to end. Story 72. I finished it only because I saw it in the theater. The movie was Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. I would have walked out if I had not paid to see it. It is one of the worst movies I have seen. Story 73. I eventually finished it on my 3rd try, but I found The Wailing to be an incredibly boring slog. My brother urged me to watch it every time I saw him. After 2 attempts, he kept insisting it gets good in the latter half, so I finally stuck it out a couple of years ago. I hated it, yet all I hear online is endless praise for that movie. Story 74. Gosh, I'm gonna get destroyed for saying this, but any of the superhero movies, Transformers, Spider-Man, Avengers, and so on, are children's films. I'm sorry, But they are not even like the better Pixar films with adult themes such as Soul. They are just kids' films. I don't get it. Story 75. I've tried to watch Avatar several times, but I keep falling asleep or getting bored and turning it off. I just don't understand the hype. Story 76. Bridesmaids. I tried to watch it twice and fell asleep both times. Story 77. Barb and Star go to Vista Del March. Maybe they did not think it was amazing, but everyone said it was funny. I did not see it as much as I love Kristen Wiig. Story 78. Harry Potter had a magical way of putting me to sleep. I watched all the movies with friends years ago, but I only remember a few scenes. Story 79. Killers of the Flower Moon. I do not know if people actually liked this. I watched about an hour and found myself looking at my phone more than at the film. One battle after another. I did not care about any of the characters. I usually like Leonardo DiCaprio, but these performances were duds. Story 80. Sinners. In one scene, out of nowhere a time warp occurs and Jimi Hendrix walks around while hip-hop plays loudly. My girlfriend and I both asked, "Where on earth did this come from?" We could not finish it after that. Story 81. I fell asleep during both Captain America, The Winter Soldier and Guardians of the Galaxy. I felt no need to finish either. Story 82. Interstellar. I really tried, but it is one of the few movies I gave up on. I couldn't stop rolling my eyes. The plot, characters, and dialogue were uninspired. It felt like a waste of strong special effects and scientific concepts. Just bear with me. You mean a retired Air Force pilot is reluctantly convinced to give it one last shot because he is somehow the only one who can save the world? Could they not have come up with something more original? The whole movie is plastered with worn-out tropes. It was extremely boring and frustrating. The dialogue was bland. I loved the special effects, but they felt wasted because of the framing of the movie. To this day, I consider Interstellar a really bad movie. Story 83. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. I kept waiting for it to be interesting or funny, but it never was. Story 84. Any Marvel film. There's no real story here. I did like Captain America, The Winter Soldier, though. To be honest, that movie is probably an 8 out of 10. Story 85. Mulholland Drive gets under my skin in a way no other media does. Great work by David Lynch. I will finish it one day. Story 86. I was completely engrossed in Avatar when Sigourney Weaver's Na'vi appeared. Wait, what was the question? Story 87. Eraserhead. Even after learning what the film is apparently about, I still can't stomach it. Story 88. The Fall Guy was the first movie that made us leave the cinema before it ended. It made us realize we could do it, and we have. I'm looking at you, Gladiator 2. Story 89. Wall-E. I am blind and rely on audio description. A movie with almost no dialogue for more than half the runtime makes the audio description non-stop and extensive, which is overwhelming. Every time I try to watch it, I fall asleep because so much information is presented so quickly and in a complex script. I know it is a great film and many people think it should be my favorite because of the subject matter, but I just cannot get through it. Story 90. Godzilla -1 felt so bad it was kind of good. I was laughing at it. It had some good concepts, I will admit, but the execution was not great. Story 91. I could not finish watching Tenet. Everything was so confusing. Story 92. Interstellar. I remember nothing about it and have no interest in trying it again. Well, okay, I remember the bookcase meme. Story 93. I could not finish Avatar or Avatar 2. Please do not throw rocks at me. Story 94. I'm going to be downvoted to hell. Interstellar. I'm sure it's a great film. People with very good taste say it is, but I just can't get through it. Story 95. Terrifier. I never understood why people want to watch what amounts to a snuff film. It is the has-been hotel of slasher films. Story 96. This is not a movie but a television series. I watch many series and have seen most of the good ones. However, I could not finish Breaking Bad. Story 97. The Big Lebowski. I disliked it so much that I stopped watching in the middle and refused to rewind it before returning it to the video rental store. Story 98. I have never seen anyone call it amazing, but the Illumination version of The Grinch was boring. I love the original animated special and the version starring Jim Carrey. This one was an absolute drag. Story 99. Man of Steel puts me to sleep every time I watch it. Story 100. Birdman. I could not stand the constant drums and cymbals. I do not want to have to strain to concentrate on hearing the dialogue in a movie. Story 101. The Lord of the Rings is too long, but I am still interested in it and may try again someday. Story 102. I don't think the humor in the Deadpool movies is well executed. To me, they are just action films you could put on mute. Story 103. For some reason, I have caught a lot of flack for not liking Pulp Fiction. Story 104. Ikiru may not be mainstream, but it's huge in cinephile circles. I believe it's top 20 on Letterboxd, and I found it repetitive, irritating, and self-pitying garbage. Story 105. Corpse Bride. I felt uncomfortable watching the film and twice gave up after about 10 minutes. Story 106. Bridesmaids is the only movie I have ever seen in theaters where I left halfway through. Story 107. Many people think The Tree of Life is amazing, but I thought it was pretentious. It would have been better if you had cut Sean Penn and the dinosaurs and focused on Brad Pitt raising his children. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.